I'm John Fahey, and I'm with the Butterfield National Historic Trail Association. Today we're going to follow the Butterfield down one of the most authentic stretches of road available to the public. We're heading south on Missouri Highway 37, about 2 miles south of Washburn, Missouri, heading for Farm Road 1050. I record my trips using the Gaia GPS app and overlay it on Google. Here you can see I've traveled the entire stretch from Washburn to the Pea Ridge National Military Park. It's about 10 miles. But Farm Road 1050 is only 4.4 miles long. Farm Road 1050 started as an Osage Indian trail through what would become Cross Timber Hollows. In 1835, the road was known as the Springfield to Fayetteville Road, and you can see the road on this 1846 General Land Office map. In 1838, when the military used the road to escort Cherokee Indians on their trailatiers, it became known as the Military Road. From 1858 through 1861, John Butterfield used the road for the overland mail service, and between 1859 and 1860, telegraph wire was run from Springfield to Fayetteville, and it became known as the Telegraph Road. I've superimposed the geo map on Google and highlighted the route we'll take today. We're coming up on a suggested Harbin Station site. Kirby Sanders placed Harbin Station south of the railroad crossing where A.S. Harbin owned a house that burned in the 1940s. However, Harbin Station was owned by John G. Harbin, and his property was 3/4 of a mile to the north, where the Park Service visited in November 2024. We are heading south across the level grasslands of southern Washburn Prairie. In 1861, 30-year-old Lyman Bennett enlisted in the Army and marched south down this road from Springfield, Missouri, into the Battle of Pea Ridge. Bennett was a surveyor and an artist, and he was soon drafted, no pun intended, into making maps for the Union Army. His map, drawn in March 1862, less than a year after Butterfield's last run, will serve to orient us as we drive south. This is an overview of Bennett's map, and I've highlighted our route today in red. We're heading for what was once Camp Cross Timber in the area just south of the current Rock Springs Church. Camp Cross Timber was set up after the Battle of Pea Ridge, and the Union Army camped here for about a month. Thousands of troops were camped here, and wounded filled all the farmhouses along this road. We are nearing Cross Timber Hollow, and on his map, Bennett provided a legend for the name. In the flight of Ben McCulloch and Price from Springfield, trees were felled across the road in the narrow portions of the valley. The name Cross Timber arises from this circumstance and will probably remain for all time. Bennett was wrong about the name. We're approaching the drop-off into Cross Timber Hollow, but it appears on modern topographical maps as Washburn Hollow. You can see how the road drops down sharply as we head into the hollow. Here we are on a modern topographical map. You can see by the narrow contour lines we are going down a steep incline over 200 feet as we decline into the hollow. And here's the label, Washburn Hollow. You may have noticed my notations for NPS stops That's because I originally prepared this video to help the Park Service after they were interrupted by flooding during their survey of the road in September 2025. And here's how Bennett depicted the drop down into the hollow. You'll note as we head south towards where the Park Service had to turn around that the creek crosses the road several times. The road here is paved, but that soon will end as it becomes a dirt road for the rest of the trip. When the Conklings drove down this road in the 1930s, they described this part of their trip as a narrow country lane traversing a sparsely settled region through the valley land of the Big Sugar Creek, a picturesque and pleasing country that appears to have undergone but little change since the days of the mail coach. We're coming up on the end of the paved road, and for the next 2.5 miles it'll be a dirt road, which was recently smoothed out after some recent rains. And we're coming up on where the Park Service made its first stop before it had to turn around. And here's Brian and the spot where he took some measurements before we continue south down the old road. So the creek's been on our left, and we're coming up to where it overflowed and the Park Service had to turn around. They had to turn around here, and as you can see, there's been a lot of work here. The road's been smoothed out because it was completely flooded back in September. And they've done a lot of work, including smoothing the road, which makes it a little bit different than when Don Matt came through here and the road was described as a harrowing, rutted, rider-throwing road. So we're coming up on an old house on the right up here. Don't know how old it is, but it's starting to fall down right now. So as you can see, it's pretty narrow in here. You can get a sense that the hills go up on the sides. The creek is still on our left, but it's off a bit, so it's not running right alongside the road. And here we're passing a road on our right, heading west up to the top of the plateau, while we come out onto a nice meadow in the valley where we'll do a 360. Imagine Lyman Bennett, the mapmaker, a few months after the Butterfield stage came through here, surveying these hills to prepare his map. A newspaper reporter wrote, "Traverse the country where you will, and an eccentric-looking personage will be seen posted on the mountain peaks, in the valleys, along the margin of noisy frog ponds, taking aim across an instrument towards all points of the compass. This is the omnipresent Bennett." The creek is in front of us, so we're looking up again to the west now, where Bennett would climb up and survey the area before climbing back down into the valley road that we're traveling along. And in the far distance ahead, we'll come across a barn. So we're coming up on the site of an old barn, which is probably one of the most picturesque sites along this whole trail. The creek has been on our left so far, but as we saw in the map, the creek crosses back and forth over the road. And here's an off-road Ranger, the only vehicle we've seen so far. And we're coming up on a creek crossing, and I call or refer to this one as the North Creek Crossing. And here we are coming up on a culvert from a hollow to the east. We're moving down Bennett's map from the old barn into what Bennett labeled cross timbers. The arrow is where we are now. We're headed for the center of cross timbers and a tree leaning over the road. The creek is on our right now, and as Bennett noted, the valley narrows and high rocky bluffs are on either side. On our left, we'll come up on a tree overhanging the road. We're entering what I think is the prettiest part of the entire road. The creek is on our right, the steep slopes of the hollow are on our left, and there's no wiggle room as we come up on an old tree overhanging the road on our left. It's pretty high, and you can envision that if it was felled, it would fall and block the road. If the creek were full, there would be no way to get through this road, especially if there were hundreds of other trees felled as well. Hence the term cross timbers. We're now exiting Cross Timbers on the south and approaching another creek crossing, which I labeled the Southern Creek Crossing. We have a little over a mile to go before Farm Road 1050 joins Missouri Route DD. So sit back and imagine that you're in one of John Butterfield's celebrity wagons 165 years ago heading towards California. So after 4.4 miles, we're coming up on Missouri Route DD. From here, it's a straight line for another 1.5 miles to the state line with Arkansas, where DD changes its name to Old Wire Road. And from there, it's only another 3.5 miles to the Elkhorn Tavern inside Pea Ridge National Park. I've enjoyed the trip, and I hope you have too. Thank you.